Woburn. I'm your host, Samantha Stone, and Mayor Concannon is back with us this week. We're very excited for that. We're going to talk to our planning director, John Cashell, about lots of things that are happening in the city. And then we have a special event that we're going to talk about. So make sure to stay tuned until the end so that you can get all the latest details on that. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Samantha. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. We sit in an office near each other, but I actually really haven't seen you all day because you've been in lots and lots of meetings today.
Yes, we're in budget cycle right now. A lot of meetings.
Yes. Everybody walks in smiling, and they mostly leave smiling in some way. So that's
maybe
good.
Not quite as much.
Maybe not as big, but we recently held the town hall meeting. It feels like a lifetime ago, but it was really only a couple weeks ago. And I wanted to just give you a chance to kind of reflect back on that. Were there any questions that surprised you or anything that on reflection you wanted to share with our audience?
A good session. We had a reasonable sized crowd in the city council chamber and probably as many online watching. We had a bunch of different questions. I don't know that I was terribly surprised. There were questions about the budget and the number of city employees. There was questions about the trash pickup and some thoughts on some potential changes as we renegotiate that contract. No, I don't think I was surprised. The first town hall we had, there was a very particular question about rodent birth control, which kind of took me by surprise, but there were no repeats of that question this last time around.
Yeah.
So no, I wouldn't say any surprises. I appreciate everybody who came and stood up and asked a question. And as I said that night, and I say repeatedly, I know some people aren't comfortable doing that in a public setting, so they can always send an email or make a phone call or stop in the office if they have a particular question they'd like to ask and get answered, but not in a big setting like that.
Absolutely. We get those all the time and we welcome them. We didn't have a rodent birth control question today, but we do have this week a rodent control meeting that's coming up that actually that topic will come up again. So
that's right.
We're grateful for that. I'm
that
just going to pause.
Wednesday night, right?
Yeah, the 15th.
Yep.
Exactly. Yep. In the library. It's going to be actually, I think, a really good educational session.
Yep.
Yep. So, Mike, we're going to change topics. I swear I didn't plan this to talk about after rat birth control. It is not associated with this question in any way, but I want to talk about budgets because you are and we are as a city in the midst of all these discussions and detailed discussions, and the budget is not in a place that I will ask you to go through your presentation yet. That will happen with City Council in a bit, but I would like to talk a little bit about revenue projections and kind of where you see things going and how you're feeling about that for the next fiscal year.
Yeah, so the two pieces of that question. The first one is how are we going to finish up this current year, the projections we made and how we're tracking, and we are on track. That's the short answer. We will wrap up this year garnering enough money to close the books in a positive fashion. And then as we look to next year, we're tracking those revenue projections right now. John Connolly, the assessor, just left my office about 5 minutes ago. We had a very brief conversation about that. As people probably realize, there are three main sources of revenue. There's the state aid, there's the property and personal property tax, and then there's the local taxes. The expectation going into next year is that the state aid will be comparable to last year, perhaps a bit of an increase. I know Rich Haggerty, Michelle Sicolo, and Cindy Friedman are working hard on our behalf to try to get as much back into Woburn as we can. That is still in process at the State House. They have not finalized their budget, but things are looking fairly positive on that front. The hotel meals tax, all those things are tracking somewhat positively, so that's good news on that front. Residential property values continue to rise. We are concerned about the commercial and industrial property tax values. I would say that right now we're looking at flat numbers, perhaps a very, very slight increase in some areas, but we're preparing for flat numbers as opposed to some of the dramatic increases we've had in the last several years. Things have leveled off somewhat. We are watching those closely. I'll get a more official projection from John and the team in the next, week or two. But as of now, I would say flat is the word.
Okay. This is a very specific question, so you might not have the answer at your fingertips, and we can always circle back around. But I've had actually multiple people ask about sanctuary recreational marijuana revenues, because that is a new revenue source for us.
Right.
And I think we get 3% of revenue. Now, when I do the math, I don't think the number is as big as people think it is, even if they're doing very well. But because we've had a few folks asking about that, I wanted to see if you had any comments there.
Yeah, so we put a very small, basically a zero placeholder for this current FY24, because we weren't sure what was going to come in and we didn't want to rely heavily on an unknown number. And the number we're projecting to be perhaps $150,000 to $200,000 total. So if that is true and that bears out in the next week or two, that's the number we'll probably carry going forward. So it's not a dramatic number. It's not millions of dollars. It's not, it's not, perhaps in line with what some folks might expect. It's a decent number, but nothing to, to balance a budget on.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. One more thing, we talk about the budget. So tonight, which will happen before people actually can view the show, but the school committee is having a public hearing on the school budget. We know the school budget, it represents, I think, the largest single item besides capital expense, if it's from an operating standpoint. And we know that we're still in an early-ish place. But for those folks who didn't participate in last week's school committee meeting, where you talked a little bit about the process from your point of view, I thought this might be a good time for you to share that with everyone.
Yeah, so the process was a little different this year. We tried to be as collaborative as we could by meeting right out of the gate with our school department friends. We actually met in my office pretty much every Wednesday afternoon for a couple of hours for the last 12 weeks or so. The idea was to try to address the budget as a team, building from the bottom up, as opposed to what's been done in the past, which kind of felt like a wish list from which we were cutting. We really didn't want to go that path again this year. So there was a lot of hard work put in to try to determine exactly what was needed, the reasons, the very specific reasons for any specific increases. So that's the process we went through. And it was myself and the city auditor, the superintendent of the schools, the chairman of the school committee, their finance team, the city council president joined us. So we had everybody at the table, so we all knew what we were in for from the get-go. We are wrapping up now. We'll be sending a budget down to the city council in the next week or two. The school committee voted the other night to send a document with a number out for a public hearing. And that public hearing will be tonight, and we're expecting to hear feedback from the public, basically explaining how they feel about the amount that is projected or that's requested. And the assumption is that the school committee will take all that into consideration, and then we'll determine what number they want to send here to City Hall for inclusion in the budget. Another step in that process that will happen tomorrow night is that the school committee will be in front of the City Council Finance Committee to talk about their budget. Something that happens every year anyway. The timing is a little unique this year, but the City Council will have the opportunity to ask very direct and specific questions about the school committee proposed budget, which will give us a bit of a highlight of what we can expect when the full city budget goes before the City Council in the next couple of weeks. So after tonight and tomorrow night, I think we'll have a much better idea of where the school committee and the City Council both feel about the school department budget. And then we will wrap up all of our discussions across the entire city, all the city department heads, coupled with that school committee budget that will then go to the council as the document for discussion.
Right.
generally
thank you,
speaking,
Brett.
I'm pleased with the process because I think it was collaborative. You know, to be blunt, I wish the number was lower. I'm concerned about the impact on the taxpayers, especially a year-over-year increase. But we are all determined to produce a budget that reflects the needs and the ability of the taxpayers to pay it. So I do feel confident that everybody is on the same page trying to achieve that goal. I'll just say I'm concerned about the total dollar amount that is on the table.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you mentioned earlier sort of revenue projections and in some segments being flat. So significant increases for even very good reasons are a challenge for us, and the magic comes trying to do that. And I think a lot of people forget the role City Council plays in our budgets, but it is certainly not something that just happens in your office. It's something that they have to have significant voice in as well.
It's by no means a rubber stamp at the City Council. They have the authority to adjust the budget primarily downward. There are some limited circumstances where they can add to a budget. Generally speaking, they look at the budget that's presented and determine whether they believe it's something that the taxpayers can afford or whether they feel the need to cut from it. That was part of the reason why I requested the City Council president attend the various meetings with the school department, so that he would know from the beginning, you know, every step of the way, and he would be well informed so he could advise the rest of the council what those dollars really mean.
I want to talk a little bit, I want to switch topics on us, and I want to talk about something that we get questions about at least every week. Somebody asked us about hazardous waste disposal. There was an article in the Times that came out today about Winchester, so not our community. It's not something that we can participate in, but it always churns more questions. It is something that we do as sort of a one-off or ad hoc process. It's not part of our regular pickup schedule. Do we have any, I think we're going to do another one. It was very well received. Yeah. Do we have any idea when that might happen?
Yeah, I think last year's was in probably September, right after the summer ended. Everyone was back in school and people had a chance to go through and clean out their garages. We did it at the high school. Yes, we are tentatively scheduling a very similar program like we had last year, same location, probably same time. We have not selected the specific date, but as soon as we nail that down, we'll make sure we publicize that.
That's great. Last thing I wanted to talk about was Woburn Redevelopment Authority. A couple weeks ago, they put out sort of their annual report that looks back at the things that they've done and talks about sort of where those made misses. I have to admit, I was really ignorant about what Woburn Redevelopment Authority was. I had to do a little bit of homework to kind of understand its relationship to the planning board. And I suspect a lot of people don't understand the relationship between those two organizations. So I thought this might be a good chance to just talk about what this group does.
Yeah, so, and John Cashell, who will be on shortly, can fill in even more details about the genesis of the WRA and because he was around and he lived that, but also he can share his thoughts on the relationship between the planning department and the WRA. I would just say that I view them both as partners to advance, you know, the progress within the city. The WRA has morphed over the years from a board that focused on North Woburn and then readjusted its focus to downtown Woburn. And we are in a bit of a rebuilding process now when it comes to the WRA, and I think we're refocusing its mission. We have some longstanding members who've given of their time and their efforts over the years, and I think they may be you know, planning on stepping down, and that gives us an opportunity to reinvigorate that board. But generally speaking, if you think about progress downtown Woburn and improvements that you've seen, the WRA has played a role in that, most prominently at the you know, the park here at the Brickyard, and then the new pocket park that was created further up by Salem Street. Great work done by our DPW on that park. There's also there's a sign grant program. There was a Porch Fest event that occurred. So we like that the WRA has been involved in many of these efforts. And now we're at the point where we're asking them to expand their horizons and consider different ways that they could contribute. But to answer the basic question, I see the WRA and the planning department / planning board as partners. And I think there's a very strong relationship between the two entities that we want to build on.
That's excellent. Thank you for that. And as always, thank you for all the updates.
Thank you, Samantha.
Great. Next up, I'd like to invite John Cashell, our planning director, to join me.
Hello, Samantha. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm really glad that you're here. Kind of a boomerang. You were here before my time in the city and then went off to get smarter and build expertise in other places. And you're now back home. And I'm really curious. It's been, obviously, you've lived in Woburn a long time, but you had a gap in time from when you were working in planning before and you are now. What's planning like now? How is it different from when you were first here?
Planning in Woburn is always fast-paced, and I do recall that from being the planner 1985 through 2001. I went from Woburn to Hudson, New Hampshire for 17 years, and then I just finished up 7 years as the town planner in Georgetown. Coming back to Woburn is pretty fast-paced compared to the smaller rural or somewhat rural environment of Georgetown. There's a lot that goes on in small towns, but nothing at the pace and scale of development in Woburn, and the number of commercial activities and roadway improvements, state grants that we're applying for as vigorously as we can. I do have 2 capable assistants in the planning office now. Back when I left in 2001, it was my secretary and myself heading up the planning department at that time. And we're about to bring in a grant writer to supplement Casey Haggerty, who is our economic development manager, and Karen Smith, who handles most of the administrative efforts and tasks involving the planning board. So I'm in more of a supervisory role, and Mike keeps me quite busy. From the minute I showed up here, I've been trying to run as fast as I can, getting things done.
I love it. And you do have a great team. I've had the pleasure of interacting with both Karen and Casey many times on the things that I've been working on. And I'm really appreciative. Karen, although it's maybe a secret talent she doesn't want the world at large to know, but she proofreads a lot of the stuff that I publish because, your eyes go crossed on it yourself. So in addition to all her normal jobs, she sometimes proofreads things for me, which I'm super grateful for.
Yes, and I'm very grateful to have both Casey and Karen working for me. It's really helping me transition into the position and do the most effective job I can for the city.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about MBTA communities. There's an FAQ on our website, and you presented to City Council just last week, and so I don't want to repeat and rehash all the things that were happening there. But what I thought would be helpful for those folks who might not have seen that is for you to touch base on the process around MBTA communities and what's happening next.
Well, this is probably the most exciting piece of legislation that's come out of the State House in many years. And relative to the multifamily housing aspect of any community, this is the most significant legislation that's come out since 40B was passed back in the late 70s and early 80s. It became effective in communities. But the 3A amendment, it's referred to as 3A. It's actually an amendment to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A, subsection 3A. And it's an amendment to the statute that prescribes for all MBTA communities, and there are 177 MBTA communities. There are 14 cities, with the remainder of the communities being towns. And right now, most towns are still going through the process of adopting the state mandated 3A statute. As far as Woburn is concerned in particular, right now, one of the major tasks that I've been assigned by the mayor is to make sure that Woburn is on the path of statutory compliance with 3A. So what we've been doing over the last several months since my hire in March is to work with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, formerly known as DHCD. We're working effectively with that agency that's overseeing the implementation and the planning of 3A for each of the 177 MBTA communities. They have been very helpful for us over the last 2 months. They've assigned at no cost to the city a consulting firm, and the actual consultant, the planning consultant, who's an expert in the MBTA/3A statute, Jeff Davis. He's been working effectively with me over the last month, and this whole effort has picked up steam just recently, where we're now analyzing, with the guidance in collaboration, working with the mayor and the city council. As you mentioned, we had a major presentation, what I consider a major presentation on what the mayor and I have been working on relative to, again, statutory compliance. This is a mandated statute that all communities have to go forward with and planning for and adopting eventually, I would imagine. But to just bring everybody up to speed that is listening and paying attention to 3A and as it applies to Woburn, right now we're in the midst of figuring out pretty much exactly where we want the overlay district that would involve the multifamily housing in Woburn. And there appears at this point in time, and this isn't set in cement by any means, and I keep on cautioning everybody about that, but it appears that in compliance with the state statute, at minimum 75% of the 2,631 units of multifamily housing that are being mandated by the state for the city of Woburn to allow for, but not in any way permit for, but just designate an overlay district that could conceivably handle such a development. Again,
I'm just going to interrupt you, John. I'm just going to simplify it a little bit for our listeners. We talked a little bit about this topic before, and you have a level of expertise that most of us listening don't, right, and watching don't. But effectively, we have talked about we need to provide a zone where these things could potentially be built should developers want to do that, and then they will go through a permitting process. You presented very recently at City Council the timeline by which we're working from, and now you're working with the consultant to present various options. Does that go to the planning board next? Is that what happens?
No. It will probably, in all likelihood, have another session in all likelihood with the city council. It was deferred to the liaison committee of the city council. So we'll probably have another review with that committee, and then work towards a final zoning amendment that would incorporate the overlay district and all the nuances of the statute. And then that would be set up for a public hearing with the planning board, and then a subsequent public hearing with the city council. And, if all goes well, we do have till December 31st of this year to take final action on this state statute. So.
And hopefully we won't need to run it down to the wire, which we appreciate the work, but there'll be plenty of opportunity for people to provide additional public comment. There were some questions that were asked at the city council meeting that was not the appropriate time to answer those questions. Do you know if city council is going to be publishing the responses to those questions, and when people might expect that?
Yes, they will be answered. And I know what the answers are already that were being asked, but we really didn't have time for that last week in that presentation. and we were going to handle it in a more formal manner. And that's what we're in the midst of doing now. If you wanted to ask me any of those questions, maybe this might be an appropriate time to try to answer them.
Yeah, there was a lot of detail, which I unfortunately don't have time to go into today, but much of that is answered in the FAQ, which is on the city website. So I would encourage people to look into that. Some of it was sort of city council process questions, how they want to approach it, what their thoughts are. And those are things certainly city council will need to document and respond. We're not, I don't want to speak for them. I know you don't want to speak for them. That's something that they'll take the lead on, but we will continue to talk about this, and we'll have you back and whoever else is appropriate to come back and dive when those maps and things are at the next stage. So before I let you go though, John, MBTA Communities is taking a lot of our time because it's important and meaningful to the city, but it's not the only thing that's a priority for planning. I wanted to, and you have been moving fast and furious, give you a chance to talk about some of the other things that your team is working on.
Again, I just want to bring out that we are really trying to chase down as many applicable grants for the city of Woburn relative to economic development potential, roadway improvements. It's a never-ending task of the city to acquire as much grant funding for the education system of our community, as well as the fire and police department grants that are available for the city. The redevelopment authority brought up earlier. I'm trying to work as effectively and as quickly as possible with that group and really try to reinvigorate their important role in the city of Woburn. As Mike pointed out earlier, they've been focused for many years on the downtown area. And I can say from 1985 until today, there's been a lot of improvements down in the downtown area of Woburn. It's a much more vibrant place for residents of the city to go for the number of eateries that exist that didn't exist at all in the 80s. You had a couple of pizza locations and maybe a couple of fast food outlets, but today there are a lot of nice restaurants in downtown Woburn. And to me, that's one of the big successes of downtown. It is a vibrant downtown for many people in Woburn to go out to eat, and they really don't have to travel very far. And who really wants to travel very far in the traffic scene that's out there? So downtown's become a very convenient place for people to go to get a good bite to eat at night, go out with the family. The Brickyard has a very active entertainment schedule again this year, as they have in past years. And the redevelopment authority has worked with that particular restaurant and making sure that particular pocket park is a very active and vibrant part of the downtown area. I really enjoy looking out from City Hall, the downtown common. I think Woburn's common, and I comment this to the mayor all the time, how beautiful it is. And how much of a significant memorial improvement has taken place. And Woburn people take a great deal of pride and respect in the downtown common, and it really shows. And we're looking at right now, and the redevelopment authority is involved with it, a big strong cleanup in the downtown area, getting ready for the Memorial Day celebration. That's a highlight for Woburn springtime every year. So we're working as effectively as possible and making sure that the downtown area is very presentable, hopefully more presentable than it has in years past. And that's what Mike's administration is all about, is beautifying and cleaning up areas of the city of Woburn that perhaps have been forgotten about, not neglected, but just forgotten about, or maybe not as much present attention paid to. But we're really trying to continue to beautify the downtown area of Woburn, as well as the entire city. There's so much going on. It's just, you could never pick it up and talk about everything in one small segment. But it's just really, really exciting to be the planning director, and I really super appreciate, to the bottom of my heart, Mike inviting me back as the planning director.
Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about what's going on with us today. As progress is made in various projects, we have an open invitation for you or anyone in your team to come back in and give us updates about all the amazing things that happen. You know, one of the things that I think someone like me, who's an incredibly impatient human being, takes for granted is the many years and months that go into most things that feel like they happened overnight. They don't happen overnight. They happen with a lot of work and a lot of effort and funding, creativity, and all kinds of things. So we're very grateful to you and the team for the work that has to happen behind the scenes.
Yeah. One thing I want to bring out that's of utmost importance, the mayor played a key role in making sure that the Main Street project, you know, this is a multi-year project and it's been planned for many years, but we were able to save that working with the regional MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is the transportation management organization for MAPC in the state for all transportation funding. And we were able
just
to,
by the way, for those of you who are watching, John is like my acronym king. He is teaching me all the state acronyms I'm learning from John along the way.
yeah. But you know, we were able to keep that project alive, and it's a $20 million. That's the estimate, and that number probably grows with the inflationary factors of construction and inflationary factors in general. But we were able to save that project. It's still on the tip. It was pushed out a couple of years, FY29 and FY30. But it's a big, important project for improving the downtown roadway system. And Mike was very instrumental in making sure that happened, and we were able to keep that project going.
We're really grateful because that area is wonderful. It definitely has some traffic safety concerns for those who drive that often or walk that area, but also what a great opportunity to bring new energy to the downtown overall. So thank you, John, so much for joining me. Next up, I have Andrins. Welcome.
Hello. Hi. Well, thank you for having me.
Please educate me on how to properly pronounce your last name.
My last name is Renaudin.
Renaudin, thank you.
Yes.
Those who watch the show regularly know I'm painfully bad with names. So thank you for doing that. I'm really glad that you're here with me today. I know nobody can really see it on the screen, but behind me on my board is the flyer for our upcoming Know Your Neighbor event.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for this one because it's really an opportunity to hear some totally inspirational stories, including yours. And I thought this would be a great thing for us to talk about. Before we talk about your story in particular, tell us how this event came to be, the inspiration behind it.
Well, we know Chris. Chris is like the big head behind this whole thing. And he's always looking for a way to get, the people in the community together, just to let people know what's going on around, and just showing the beautiful side of Woburn that wouldn't be normally shown in other ways. So he just thought of the idea and he said, "What do you think about this?" And I'm like, "Well, sure. So let's talk about it with other people." And then so many people got on, and and here it is. It's coming to life in a couple of days.
I love this. So this is going to be 3 stories of people who are living in Woburn and mean so much to us in our community and do so many amazing things to serve our community, and where their stories started and how they came. So I won't have you give away your story here today, but maybe tell us a little bit about where it started and how you first got to Woburn.
Well, it really started before Woburn. It started in 2001 when I moved here with my mom from Haiti, and I did move to Woburn in November 2011, and here we are.
Yeah.
So my son was born in Woburn. He's now in Woburn Public School, and we love it. I grew to love Woburn even more in the last year or two because I'm getting around the community, getting to know the people. I didn't know there were so many people that were similar to me in the community, because I would just come home, do my thing at home, and then I work out of the city. I go to church out of the city, school out of the city. So I wasn't really getting around Woburn to get to know the neighborhood. But as of mainly last summer, I've been going around. There's a friend near me who's been really getting me included in things around. So I love it. I'm loving it even
Oh,
more.
well, we're so glad that you've ingrained yourself even more in our community. It is a wonderful place. I've been here almost 30 years now, and I still learn something new all the time. So I appreciate that very much. You'll be joined on the panel by two other speakers. Tell us a little bit
Yes.
about who will be joining you.
We'll be joining with Olga from St. John's and another young man, don't remember his name, Shafiq, I think his name is, who also a Woburn resident. So two people who are doing amazing things here in Woburn, involved in different ways. And I can't wait to hear their story either, because we do stuff in the community together, but we really don't know. We're so busy, we don't really have time to sit and go into details, learning about each other. So this is a good time for us to come together, sit and really know where we come from and how we all connected today doing everything that we do in our community.
I love it. Let's remind our audience, this is happening at Studio Cafe. What day and time?
It's on Wednesday, coming Wednesday at 7 o'clock at Studio Cafe. Come early so you can find a spot, because the cafe fills up pretty quickly, and this is an amazing event. So everyone's gonna come out from. I actually invited people outside of Woburn, so don't let them find a seat. And you right here in Woburn, and you have to stand for the whole thing.
That's right. We're going to take our places first. And
Right.
I think that it's Wednesday the 22nd, correct?
Yes,
That's
the 22nd.
Perfect. I know people watch this on different days, so I always like just to make sure we give the actual date for folks to do that. I am so excited for this event. I'm actually honored. I was asked to host the event, so I'll be with you, mainly just introducing you and help moderating, keeping us on time, and help gather questions from our audience. You all will be the stars of the stories and are such inspirations for where you've come from, but the work that you do in our communities today. We're very blessed to have all of you, and I can't wait to learn more.
Of course, we were excited to hear it was you. She has the right personality for this, so we have a complete package. We're excited as well.
Excellent. Well, Woburn, I hope to see you there on the 22nd. I hope the information that we shared on the show is helpful as always. And as always, Woburn, please continue to take good care of each other.